Once upon a time, in a vast and beautiful forest, there stood a tall and mighty oak tree named Atlas. He was the tallest and most magnificent tree in the forest, his branches reaching high into the sky and his roots stretching deep into the earth. Atlas was proud of his stature and strength, and he reveled in the admiration of the other trees in the forest. He stood tall and unyielding, unafraid of the storms that raged through the forest and the winds that howled through his branches. But despite his pride and strength, Atlas was lonely. He had stood in the forest for many years, watching the other trees grow and flourish around him, but he had never felt the touch of another tree against his own branches. One day, as Atlas was standing in the sunshine, basking in his own glory, he saw a tiny acorn fall from the sky and land at his feet. He looked down at the tiny acorn, wondering where it had come from. As he was looking at the acorn, he heard a voice whisper in his ear. "Plant me," the voice said. "Plant me in your soil and watch me grow." Atlas looked around, but he saw no one. He turned his attention back to the acorn, wondering if he had imagined the voice. He picked up the acorn in his branches and examined it closely. It was small and brown, with a hard shell that looked impenetrable. But as he held it, he felt a strange warmth spread through his branches, and he knew that the acorn was special. Without hesitation, Atlas planted the acorn in his soil. He dug a hole deep enough for the tiny seed to take root, and he watered it with care. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Atlas watched as the tiny seedling grew, its roots spreading deep into the soil and its branches reaching high into the sky. As the seedling grew taller, Atlas felt a strange sensation in his branches. It was as if the tiny tree was reaching out to him, asking for his guidance and support. Without hesitation, Atlas extended his branches towards the young tree, touching its leaves with his own. And in that moment, he knew that he had found the companion he had been searching for. As the years passed, Atlas and the young tree grew together, side by side. They weathered many storms and weathered them well. They stood tall and strong, their branches entwined and their roots intertwined. Together, they watched as the forest changed around them. Trees grew and fell, animals came and went, and the world shifted and evolved. But Atlas and his companion remained steadfast and unyielding, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. One day, as Atlas was standing in the sunshine, he heard a strange sound in the distance. It was a sound he had never heard before, a sound like the roar of 1,000 animals and the crash of 1,000 waves. As he listened, the sound grew louder and louder until it was almost deafening. And then, all at once, the ground beneath him shook and trembled, and he knew that something terrible was happening. He looked around, but he saw nothing but the trees and the sky. And then, all at once, he felt a sharp pain in his roots, and he knew that something was pulling him away from the earth. He struggled and thrashed, trying to free himself from the force that was dragging him away. But it was no use, and he felt himself lifted up into the air, his roots ripped from the soil. As he was lifted up into the air, Atlas looked around in terror, wondering what was happening. And then, all at once, he saw the source of the noise that had been growing louder and louder. It was a group of lumberjacks, wielding chainsaws and axes, cutting down trees left and right. Atlas watched in horror as his fellow trees fell to the ground, their branches and leaves torn from their trunks. He struggled harder, desperate to break free and protect his companion tree. But as he struggled, he realized that he was too late. The lumberjacks had already reached the young tree, and they were hacking away at its trunk with their axes. In that moment, Atlas felt a surge of anger and despair. He had been standing in the forest for centuries, watching as the world around him changed and evolved. He had weathered countless storms and challenges, and he had always remained strong and unyielding. But now, he felt helpless and powerless, unable to protect the one thing he cared about most. As he watched the young tree fall to the ground, Atlas felt a sharp pain in his own trunk. He knew that he had been cut down as well, his own branches and leaves torn from his body. But even as he fell to the ground, Atlas refused to give up. He refused to let the lumberjacks win, to let them destroy the beauty and wonder of the forest. With all the strength he had left, Atlas lifted himself up from the ground, his roots searching for the soil beneath him. And then, all at once, he felt a surge of energy and power, as if he was being lifted up by a force greater than himself. He looked around in wonder, amazed at what he saw. His body was covered in new growth, new leaves and branches sprouting from his trunk. And as he looked down, he saw that his roots had taken hold in the soil once again, anchoring him firmly to the ground. In that moment, Atlas realized that he had been given a second chance. He had been cut down, but he had not been defeated. He had been broken, but he had not been destroyed. With a fierce determination, Atlas lifted himself up to his full height, his branches reaching high into the sky. He looked around at the other trees in the forest, at the animals and creatures that called it home, and he knew that he had a purpose. He was no longer just a tree. He was a symbol of strength and resilience, of hope and perseverance. He was the oak tree, standing tall and proud in the face of adversity, never giving up, never giving in. And as the years passed, Atlas continued to grow and flourish, his branches reaching higher and higher into the sky. He watched as the world around him changed and evolved, but he remained steadfast and unyielding, a symbol of strength and resilience for all who passed through the forest. And in that way, he knew that he had fulfilled his purpose. He had become the oak tree, a symbol of hope and perseverance, standing tall and proud in the face of all that life could throw at him.